real expert on the Middle East, a real expert on Eastern Europe, a real expert on Ukraine and Russia. Now the Russians coming out and saying we have the proof that Western intelligence funded these guys with cryptocurrency, and all of this is big. So I want to pick his brain about that too. RT, investigators established link between Moscow terrorist attack and suspects in Ukraine. What will the aftermath of that be? But Jack, first off, why is there such obsession over a solar eclipse? And you correct me, I'd forgotten this. 6 years ago, they did it too when it was over Oregon. And they called out the troops and had civil emergency. But that was the first time. So why are they suddenly taking a routine, scientific, natural phenomenon and doing this? I see it as a drill, because they're doing it for command and control over local governments and just to hype up more fear. But there's also the esoteric angle. Jack Posobiec, what do you think?
Look, Alex, all I can say is we've known for thousands of years at this point that eclipses have always had symbology that's tied to the occult, that's tied to these types of practices, that's tied to mysticism, to hidden knowledge, to shadow work. There's an idea in occult practitioners that an eclipse signifies a piercing of the veil, or a piercing of the veil between worlds. So it's a very spiritual, very supernatural belief. And now, I'm not saying that that's something that I personally believe. I'm not saying that. Now, that being said, I don't know. I can't confirm or deny it, right? I'm also not saying that that's necessarily what everybody going out there believes. But the point of the matter is there are people who believe this. And so it's incumbent, just like you're saying about some of these other prophecies out there, you have to understand what the beliefs are if you're operating in that environment. If you want to understand radical Islam, you have to know what the radical Islamists believe. If you want to understand whatever your opponent is, if you want to understand the Chinese Communist Party, you have to understand their beliefs. You want to understand Klaus Schwab and the globalists, you have to understand their beliefs. Look, eclipses, they're viewed as mystical. They're viewed also, by the way, as a sort of changing of the cycle, a changing of the pattern. So this idea that there's power in the eclipse, there's secret knowledge that's being revealed, there's a pathway through the dimensions, and it's kind of like a portal being opened, if you will. And that's really one of the.
Jack Posobiec said portals on AJ, and I saw your eyes do an MK Ultra trigger word. Portals. I don't deny portals. So.
The big beliefs. And many, by the way, a lot of people say this about like Halloween and All Hallows Eve, and they'll have that same type of occult belief around that. This is where the same beliefs come in when it comes to eclipses. Now, what's strange to me is, as you say, Alex, we're seeing this government response and this government action that's tied directly into this. And people are saying, oh, NASA's shooting off these communication satellites, and they want to just measure what's going on with the eclipse and how it's protecting our atmosphere and ionosphere. Okay, sure. I'll ask Elon Musk about that. I'll put it this way. I'd be very interested in getting Elon Musk out here to talk about what he knows about all this.
Very astute answers. I totally agree with you. And so the globalists believe in this, but they're also going to use it as a way to put their propaganda out during news coverage of it, as another way to try to unify people, knowing it's going to be much bigger than the Super Bowl because of the hype when everybody tunes into this. But also, even energetically, astrophysics, I'm not an expert on it, but I've read the articles and seen the reports. When planets align and when the moon goes in front of the sun, it does do a lot of electromagnetic things. We have the circadian rhythm of when the sun goes down, you get sleepy. When it comes up, you wake up. It does do a weird thing in the mind of people. So if we're all focused on an event, they can program us there, but also at esoteric level, program people. And so I think that's why there's such an obsession with it, is because we deep down at a biological level find this very interesting. I mean, there was just an eclipse, a 90% one last year, and the birds started going to sleep and, singing before they went to sleep. And it was only like 40 minutes long. Then you got light again, and they woke back up again. And it was very magic. And so I think that this is just, there's an interest in this, and that's why government's hijacking it.
Well, Alex, I mean, it's very clear that they're animals. Animals always react in the natural world in ways that we, for many years, couldn't explain. For some years, are starting to explain. People know that dogs can detect magnetic fields and things like this, and which is true, by the way. People are gonna, clip that, but it's true. They can. And
that's how butterflies navigate 3,000 miles.
That's how butterflies navigate, right? And so they have senses that animals have senses that we do not have. They can detect fields, that can detect electromagnetism and other other things. And so this idea that we're all missing something, but the animals can detect it. It's very clear that that's something that these are huge power sources that are endemic and really just natural to our world. In fact, that we were just over in Serbia a couple of months ago, and we visited the Nikola Tesla Museum. And one of the things they talk about at Tesla's museum, that when he was researching, and the Rockefellers were originally behind all of his research. And then when he came up to them and said, oh yeah, well, what I found is 0-point energy, and that we can do 0-point energy, and we can broadcast energy to anywhere in the world completely for free, and we can pull it directly out of our natural system, directly out of the ionosphere. And they immediately pulled the plug, pun intended, on all of his work, because they said, well, wait, we can't monetize free energy. How can you monetize free energy? So this stuff is out there. The theoretics behind this have been out there for over a century at this point, but there's a concerted effort, and there has been a concerted effort, number one, to keep it quiet because it's not economically viable, but also number two, because this would be not only some of the most creative power in the world, but also the most destructive.
I think the best way to describe this is Jules Verne's 130, 40 years ago described spaceships that take off the way Elon Musk has designed them and go to the moon or go to an asteroid, take off vertically, land vertically. And it happened. Max Planck 140 years ago envisioned atomic theory and the equations for atomic bombs.
Aldous Huxley televisions.
All of it. So we're so powerful, what we think about, we don't magically manifest like Oprah Winfrey said, but with enough technology and a big enough massive systems, we're almost there. That's what singularity is, when we do just manifest stuff. But our brain is not God. We're still just people, but we have this godlike power, little g. And so the ancients could see this and know this and picked up on energy systems and kind of gave it their perspective. But now with science, we know so much more, and it's actually proving what the ancients thought. But Jack, before you go, because I know you're very busy, and I appreciate you giving us some time, I want a copy of your new book. I know it's already shot up into the top right now, and it ties into all this. So tell us a little bit about your book, and then before we go to Jay Dyer and others and some huge folks here on the Spaces, and also give me your quick snapshot, because you folks, I don't just tell every guest they do this. We have guests back that do nail it, but he nailed it like Robin Hood splitting the arrow. It's one thing at 100 yards, because I can do this. I used to be a good archer. I'm still decent when I did it a lot. I could hit bullseye at 100 yards 2 or 3 times if I really relaxed and did it. And occasionally at 50, I would actually split the arrow like Robin Hood, but they're composite now, so we just kind of break it. But this guy splits the arrow like 3 times. You 100% nailed in the last couple of years on my show everything that's happened with Russia, with Ukraine. You predicted the terror attacks coming. What is your snapshot of what's happening there after you tell us about your book?
Look, Alex, I appreciate that so much. Everybody needs to go and get a copy of this book, Unhumans, pre-order it, because this is what we're up against. You have the forces of unhumanity versus team humanity, or the forces of humanity, the people who actually want to continue the human race and life on this planet as we know it, or the people who want to destroy it, to overturn it, to depopulate it, to turn us into some form of other creature, and there's many other types that they'd like to turn us into. But this is what the point of the book Unhumans is all about. We go through the communist revolutions of the past. We talk about how these forces have been building over the years and bringing us to where we are now. So people can go get it, Unhumans. It's at Amazon. It's at Barnes & Noble. It's everywhere. Look, when it comes to, Alex, this question of how these terror attacks took place, look, it's very clear to me that when you have a situation where you're in a desperate position like the Ukrainian government is, and really the Ukrainian government, people need to understand that this is a proxy government, a regime that is controlled by and large by the United States government and elements of the Central Intelligence Agency, with Victoria Nuland and others pulling.
So it's a globalist kamikaze.
It's 100% a kamikaze. And when this thing is going down, they don't want to go down alone. They want to continue the destabilization efforts, because the goal was never control of Ukraine. They don't care about Ukraine. They don't care about the people of Ukraine, the families, the children. They don't care. If they cared, they wouldn't be putting bioweapons.
But you said 3 months ago, 2 months ago, a month ago, we played the clips. You said now they've hired this new intelligence guy. They're going to launch terror attacks, probably on, you even said, on public events, theaters. Boom, you called it months before the State Department.
Because I understand their playbook, Alex. Their playbook is destabilization. When they get the reins of power, they're going to foment war. When they lose the reins of power, what do they turn to? Asymmetric attacks. So asymmetric means what? Asymmetric means biological, it means chemical, it means electronic, it means economic, and then, yes, of course, it means terrorism. So terrorist attacks that could take place, and then of course with a flag of convenience, shall we say? Oh, that wasn't us. That was some of these ISIS guys. Oh, that wasn't us. That was some that was some group that just magically appeared out of nowhere. It's amazing to me, by the way, this ISIS case, so convenient. They pop up, they attack the Taliban. They pop up, they attack Iran. They pop up, they attack Moscow and a bunch of random civilians in a concert hall. But with all of Israel, Gaza going on right now, which is clearly one of the most destabilizing events anywhere in the Middle East. Here's a quote unquote radical Islamic group that apparently doesn't seem to care about the Israel-Gaza crisis. No, they're much more focused on Moscow. Alex, it doesn't make any sense unless you understand the Unhumans and understand their agenda. And if you do, you will be able to predict these things.
And you said months ago,
if it is correct, it is predictive.
You said the goal would be to get Putin to overreact. Are we seeing signs he will, or what do you predict is going to happen now?
Look, they want him to overreact. They want him to invade Europe. They've been goading him to, telling him the French are going to come in, telling him the Poles are going to come in, saying F-16s are coming, this and that. They want Putin to overreact and push this on because ultimately, and this is the worst part of it all, ultimately, they want to trigger a third world war. And this is something that a lot of people don't want to admit, but there are those out there who think that they would benefit from a third world war. Well, let's just put it this way. If you believe in the depopulation agenda, then what would be more depopulating than another world war?
Perfectly said. Come on in the next few weeks. We'll do a full hour on your book. You host Human Events. Incredible information. Jack Posobiec, thank you so much.
We'll do it. God bless, Alex.
Take care. All right. We got a lot of people on Spaces, so we'll intersperse this, but I want to bring an amazing researcher on the esoteric from their own documents. And I've read a lot of globalist books, but I'll be honest. I got exhausted about 10 years ago. I probably read, let's not exaggerate, 300 books written, probably 400 by the globalist. I probably read 300 books against the globalists that were super accurate, from all the great patriots, from Anthony Sutton to you name it. So, and I've read some of their new ones, but I kind of cheat, get the syllabus or, get the back, and I kind of flip around and read the quotes to make sure what I read in the news was accurate. This guy constantly goes off what they said 100 years ago, what they said 50 years ago, what they said today. And he understands their mindset and how everything's a big ritual to program our subconscious and unconscious. Jay Dyer, what do you think they're hyping up this eclipse that's just a no big deal occurrence in my view, with civil unrest and civil emergencies and just all this fear-mongering? What do you think's behind it?
Yeah, I have a few thoughts on this. First would be, if we rewind all the way back to like Y2K, I remember getting nervous about Y2K. I bought a sleeping bag and like some sandwiches and put it in my car because I thought something apocalyptic was going to happen. And that was my first experience with the news really hyping up something that didn't turn out to be anything apocalyptic. We think about a lot of the terror alerts throughout the 2000s after 9/11. They had the coded color schemes of like, we're on orange level terror. That was all intended to keep everybody in a constant state of fear and anxiety. We had 2012, if you remember, that was the Mayan calendar. And Terrence McKenna came up with this, in 2012, we're going to have the end of the world due to the Mayan calendar. And nothing happened on 2012, surprise. We had Jade Helm, which I think was a lot of research, maybe deep AI research into how people would react to the stories of multiple states engaged in these kinds of preparations, continuity of government preparations. So a lot of these things are drills that tie into the events. We have, 2014, there was a push for Ebola. That was fake. That might have been kind of wargaming for what we saw with the COVID crisis, which was, again, ramped up, blown out of proportion.
Well, that's what I see it as, is just a way to kind of beta test martial law ahead of the election, which they admit they're actually thinking about doing.
Yeah, and they love to, again, there's also that esoteric angle that you pointed out, which is really, I see it as hijacking, right? And you've made this analogy many times on your show to Mel Gibson's Apocalypto, where the Aztec high priest ties it into the sun's going to be blotted out, and if you don't sacrifice 10,000 human beings, the sun won't come back. And look, oh, you did, so the sun comes back. And I think that a lot of the deep state, the social engineers, they will actually study end times prophecies, end times beliefs to try to co-opt them, to try to engineer them, or try to bring about stuff. It's not that they necessarily believe in it.
And Frank Herbert was a great writer. His first book's incredible. The others are okay. But I don't know if you saw the new Dune. Much better than the last one.
I did.
I mean, that's what it's all about. But then at the end, it turns out it's actually real. It's not just,
Turns out to be real.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, we have like this false version of it with the sort of the Hal Lindsays and the Harold Campings and the John Hagee and the Blood Moons of Israel. And by the way, Jesus isn't the Messiah, but also maybe he is. So that's all deceptive. That's a bunch of con artistry that the system uses to scare people about things that aren't real. However, it turns out, yeah, exactly in the analogy of Dune, there are real versions of these things. Right? There is a real sense to which signs in the heavens do portend different events. We see that all the way back to Genesis, where the stellar luminaries are created for the purpose of signs and symbols, and basically kind of being a calendar for us. And that's the case. Matthew 24, Luke 21, these texts talk about what will be the case in the end time. So I'm not saying that it's never the case that we don't have signs in the heavens, but we have to be aware that the government has studied this at a deep level with people like Cass Sunstein. He wrote a famous book, or excuse me, an essay about cognitive infiltration. Everybody should go read Cass Sunstein's essay, because he talks about this very point of studying the way that the truth movement and the conspiracy groups online, the way that they look at things, and then he says injecting a bunch of false conspiracies.
And that's what they did. That's what they did with Q.
Absolutely, yeah. Q is another version of Nasera. I remember you a long time ago would talk about the Patriot conspiracy and the SAR and the white hats, and then Q was just really an updated version of that, which, as we know, was an older, updated version of an old Bolshevik plan to draw out the right wing.
What was that called? It was called Operation Trust the Plan.
Correct. Yeah, trust the plan, exactly. So the government loves conspiracy theories. The social engineers love conspiracy theories. They'll study it. It's called paranoid awareness, and they like to manipulate and play on this. Another point that you've made is you go to the lockstep document. In the first scenario, they outline the fact that when the COVID crisis and the lockdowns fail, when it fails, they're talking about the lockdowns. They go on to say that people will cry out for the failure of the existing system for a replacement savior system that we will give you. Klaus echoes that by saying the exact same thing.
And they say that in the SPARS document from just a few years before the COVID.
Yeah. So the system loves to play on the fears, the anxiety, keep everybody in a perpetual state of fear. And then that allows them to get you destabilized or distracted. I think a lot of this has to do with the distraction too, from all the corruption of the Biden regime, people questioning the Moscow event, people looking at hot button topics on Twitter. That this is a distraction to get people into these fake conspiracies again. And if anything does happen in relationship to this date or this event, it won't be because of the eclipse, in my view, in my opinion. It would be because they want to tie it into something related to their strategies to preempt the election.
I totally agree. So something big may happen then, or crazies may seize on it too. There's that wild card. Exactly. Real fast, Jay, and you can ride shotgun if you want. We're going to go to some other speakers, but stay with us if you want to comment. We're going to go to some other folks here in a moment, but riveting information. What do you make of the red heifer? Because I'm also getting that. I mean, I'm literally besieged with it on the street, everywhere. Red heifer, red heifer, red heifer. What do you think about that?
Is this a woman? Who you talking about?
The whole, it's messianic. Yeah.
Heifer, I hardly know her.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I do think that whenever there is an attempt to rebuild the temple, there will be something like this. In the Orthodox Christian tradition, we do have this idea that there will be an attempt to rebuild the temple. There will be an Antichrist at some point in the future. I've been hearing the story of the red heifer back since I was an evangelical.
Yeah, but now they're actually sacrificing it tomorrow. I mean, it's going on.
Yeah, but I think don't we need a temple though? I mean, I'm not.
Well, I think you kill the heifer to purify.
To prepare it.
Yeah, to prepare it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean that could be a signifier. I don't have any hard opinion on that, but if this does go forward, then yeah, I think that if they begin to build a temple, one of the things that most of our tradition talks about is that if you begin to see a third, temple, this does signify the possible coming of Antichrist in the near future.
So then why would Christians be running around financing it like they're going to make God bring in the Antichrist? This is just insane.
Well, they're deluded. So they're controlled by a lot of these, deep state groups and social engineers and, the kinds of entities that we've been talking about. They're controlled by those people, and they're going to be duped and they're going to fall for some false.
Well, there's no doubt the globalists, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know you're going to agree because it's the truth, but you're an expert on it. The globalists are obsessed with World War III bringing in their final system.
Yeah, I mean, this has been, you go back to, what is it, the National Security Memorandum, Pete, the 60, the one that has to do with preemptive nuclear strikes, and if we receive them, then we'll
61.
It's like or
51.
Yeah, that's it. The Clinton era, it was the Clinton era policy about receiving the nuclear strikes, and so to me that looks like the ultimate version of let's blow up the existing system, and then we'll bring in that global technocratic New World Order system and a global world war. We know they're eventually going to try to have that. Whether this is it, I don't know. But that directive is the very plan for global war that then allows the system to offer on a global scale a solution to the problems of the nation states. So the idea is that, look, nation states have fallen. They failed. Elections, people choosing these things. This is all failed. You're going to cry out for a solution in a more extreme sense in the way that you cried out for the solution from the COVID crisis. And that's the whole thing, right? We'll give you that solution via the technocratic government that H.G. Wells wrote about 100 years ago.